Immortal Works, Flash Fiction Friday, Episode 8. There Was a Woman Dwelt by a Graveyard, by David J. West. Read by Zach Bjorge. Of all ghosts, the ghosts of our old loves are the worst. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In the months prior to Lake Mead flooding my old homestead, I was given much to driving back and forth between the new and the old. I hired day laborers to help with the move and ranching. I'm not as young as I used to be, and the ranch needs a lot of work. One of the laborers was an older feller named Thomas Bickersham, who grew up around here. He says he'd been gone since he was a young'un. I do not recall any family by that name in these here parts, but he was a hard worker. On the first day of Mr. Bickersham's help, we were passing by the old graveyard of St. Thomas, all of the graves having been removed to the new cemetery in Overton, and we both saw a woman standing there in the morning, and again at twilight. It was hard to see her exact features, but she had a long gray dress and long dark hair that was flying in the wind, quite unkempt and wild, though I don't recall there being any wind that day when we stopped the truck later. We saw her again the next day, both in the early morning light and the gloomy twilight of evening. He claimed it was for sure not anyone he had ever known nor spoken to. He may have been a bad liar, but he was still a good ranch hand, so I didn't worry. I seem to recall a tale told of a woman who dwelt by the graveyard for the last few odd years, and I had never paid it no mind. Some of my other hands had spoken of seeing her before and told tales of relating to this heartbreak or that, or even perhaps that she was a lost soul from when the town had seen wilder days. Some said she was a ghost, but I thought not, as her dress did not look as old as that, nor did I believe I have ever seen a ghost either. She did not look like a spook to me. On the third day we again saw the woman. I found it especially strange, as I am sure that there are no more graves there, all of them having been moved on over to Overton's new Mead Lake Cemetery in the last couple months or so. There is no good reason that the woman should be spending so much time in such a place that the Federals claim will be underwater in a few more months. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I could not see her anymore, and I wondered where she had gone. Saying as much to Bickersham only made him cringe, and he looked nervously out the rear window, admitting that he was afraid of spooks. I said I didn't believe in spooks, and told Bickersham that I meant to talk to the woman if she was indeed there as we would pass by that evening. Bickersham said that was fine, but as the evening came on and our work was nearly done, he made excuse after excuse to not go with me back to the homestead and thereby have to go past the graveyard. I said fine, and left him to make out for himself overnight at the new ranch. As I drove closer to the old graveyard, I did not see the woman, and was quite perplexed, as I had fully expected to see her again after so much routine. But I did stop the truck and take a look round to sate my own curiosity on the matter. It was getting dark, and I found no sign of any person being there save for the marks where the old graves had been exhumed. It was then that I realized that the woman I had seen on those previous occasions had not been in the graveyard proper, but right outside the boundaries. I walked to that place and saw that the ground there was sunken and denoted the possibility of being another grave outside, and that it had been missed. I wondered if she was indeed a spook, and I alone was privy to her sorrow and struggle at being left behind, and that she was in mourning to having been forgotten, and that soon enough her unattended and forgotten grave would be under the waters of Lake Mead forever. This in the sunset made me wax more poetic than usual, and I smiled to myself. I then drove on home, thinking I would inquire with old man Perkins about the possibility of a missed grave, and whether there was anything more to the woman in the graveyard story dating back to the pioneers. That night I slept fitful-like. I was roused multiple times thinking I'd heard screams, but when I woke, there was no sound but the crickets, and even then they weren't too loud. In my mind's eye, I thought I saw the woman's face, even though I had never gotten a good look at it before. I also thought I saw Bickersham's leering face, and it made me uneasy. Next morning, I was called away on account of a broken fence, and rather than drive all the way back out to the South 40 to get Bickersham, I went and fixed the fence myself. When I stopped at Gentry's, I saw old man Perkins there, as I've told you earlier, and I asked about the gray woman. He said that he had heard about her for some years, but that it was only that. Years. Like about 40, he said. Folks only started seeing the spook when he was 25. Some suspected that it was the spook of Molly Traeger, but no one knew why she would haunt anyone. More likely, he said it was the calico gal from Rioville who'd come up from one of the last steamships and plied her trade here for a few months. Then one night she just disappeared. Most everyone figured she just used up the town and moved on. But it wasn't long after that folks started to see the gray woman at the graveyard. Old man Perkins needed something to do beyond play cards with the Garvey boys, so he rode along with me. We stopped at the old cemetery, and I showed him the spot where I'd seen the gray woman, and he agreed it looked suspect. Being that it was right outside of the graveyard, there weren't no law to prevent us from taking a look. I took the shovels from out of the back of my truck, and we dug into the rocky ground. Not even 2 feet down, and we found it. Bones in a gray dress. The very same faded ash gray that I had seen the woman wearing. Strangely, the ring finger on her left hand had a gold wedding band, but old man Perkins was near to sure that it was indeed the calico gal. I guessed that the mystery was solved, and that now the calico gal's body had been found, she could be laid to rest proper with the others from the graveyard, and not worry about her grave being forgotten and left to flood over. As I pulled into the driveway of my ranch house, I noted that no new work had been done on the place. I was upset that Bickersham had taken my absence to mean a day of loafing, but I soon found him in the garage. He was expired. A final note of confession was crumpled in his dead left hand. I pulled it loose and read, "I, Travis Longstreet, whom you knew as Thomas Bickersham, do hereby confess my crimes, done committed in my youth of 40 years agone. I didst murder the woman I loved, a lady of ill repute, name of Jessica Steinem, as she would not quit her sinning and marry me. Afterward I didst attempt to do the proper Christian thing of burying her in the graveyard. I did, however, miscalculate on account of the dark and my drunkenness, and I done buried her outside of it. I knew when I saw her spectre that my past would not go away, and she would come for me some day, as she said she would when I killed her. May God have mercy on my soul. P.S. Please bury me in a different graveyard than her." Wrapped around Bickersham's neck, in the fashion of a hangman's noose, was a ragged, ash-gray dress, still dusted with fresh-dug soil, while a gold wedding ring lay refused on the ground beside him.